Hey, welcome to the show. Today we have a good friend of mine, and really, I guess he's a friend of the family too. John Krotec, host of Straight Outta Combat Radio, also founder of Green Zone Heroes, and you know what? A great patriot and a veteran, and one of those guys that we love having on the show, love having in my network, love having as a friend. And I just like to say, welcome to the show, John, and glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Otis and Camden. You humble me and you make me feel like a celebrity. So, whenever somebody can feel special on a show, it's a good place to be. So, I'm happy to be here, and I have been up to Savannah area to visit your son and your other son, and he's a great guy, and he's serving his country as well. He's in the chemical corps like I was, and it would have been awesome to have a young lieutenant like him as part of the chain of command, because we could have really done some things together.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm sure he'll appreciate knowing that. And I'm sure knowing you probably already told him that. So,
I played father to him, but you know how it goes.
oh yeah.
He's a great guy, and I've enjoyed going up there whenever we blow through Savannah. He's right there at Fort Stewart, and he's doing a great job. And I just love to be around young men like that who have raised that hand and that arm and swore an oath to this great country. And it makes me proud to know that we got young guys like that serving our country. It makes me feel good.
That's a great point. And every so often something like I run across something like that, younger person or whatever, and it's just that little reminder that everything's going to be all right, no matter what you watch on the 24-hour news channels, whichever channel you partake in, or if you even don't. It's going to be okay. It ain't going to be the way it was when we were kids or the way it was when our parents were kids. But you know what? There's good people out there, and there's good young people out there that will be running this place long after we're gone. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, you and I have talked about this before with cores of history and all that type of stuff. Like there's always something going on, and people always figure it out. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. we got a few smart guys around here.
That's a great point. And you're so right, Otis and Camden, because we hear all the time in the proverbial media how we're in trouble, and this younger millennial generation doesn't really have it together. And honestly, guys like you, Camden, and your older brother, Braden, it leaves me, it satisfies me to know, like your dad just said, that it's in good hands. It's still a great country. We got great people at the helm. And all I can say is, an older guy like myself and your father, it's up to us to mentor the younger guys. And so I feel like we're still on a mission, and you all just make me proud, you young guys. So, and you're right, Otis, it's different from when we were in, we might've been more of wildcats back then, but it's certainly nice to know we're in good hands. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'd love to do, John, is what really, when did this happen? I know you raised your right hand 30 plus years ago to join the Army, but when did you feel that, man, I've got to do something to continue to serve and to give back and prove what a great nation this is?
Thank you for that. And I'll tell you, Camden, I have a younger brother too. And my dad was in the United States Army. He did 8 years active duty, and he did 20 years in the reserves. And he was an officer like your dad. And of course I went the NCO route. Sometimes I don't know why, but I'm glad I did. But I was about, Otis, to answer the question, I was about maybe 9 years old. And every summer our family would go on a summer vacation, as most families do. And my dad, for some reason or another, was always dragging me off to some Civil War battle site. I could never figure out why. I'm a young guy. I wasn't really interested in history, but I guess he took me under his wing, being his oldest son, and we were at Spotsylvania in Virginia. And we were standing at a place called the Mule Shoe, which is where the 2nd U.S. regular Union Army was meeting the 2nd Confederate infantry. And they fought for 28 hours at this place. And the bodies were piling up. Men on both sides were going in, and my dad was describing it, in usual Army officer fashion. And it was almost like he was there, explaining the cannons and what battery was over here. And I looked up at him and I said, Dad, I said, why would guys from the same country want to fight each other? Well, my dad could dole out, he basically whacked me upside the head, and he said, son, he said, there are some things in this life that are bigger than you. And if we didn't have a country like America, then my parents couldn't have came here to raise their family. And it sounds kind of weird. I didn't think about it till probably 20 years later. But when I got out of college, of course, I didn't go in the military right away. I went out into the corporate world, and then, I found myself, it wasn't really me. And I felt, if I'm ever going to serve my country, and I so badly wanted to, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So at 26 years old, which is kind of a late bloomer, if you will, I raised my right arm and I went in, and it was one of the best things that I ever did, because I learned firsthand what commitment and sacrifice, teamwork is all about. And I had some of the best leaders ever, from, first lieutenants all the way up to field grade officers that basically looked out for me. The term eating cheese. I never ate cheese, but I got the job done. And my chain of command, they could rely on me, and they always maybe gave me some pretty lousy jobs to do, but they wanted them done. And I just am so glad I was able to serve. I was in the 4th Infantry Division in the 31st Chemical Company, 4th NBC Battalion. And I made sergeant stripes really quick. 21 months I was an E5, and I was in the Sergeant Audie Murphy Club.
And by the way, that is not just quick, Army wise. That's quick, even infantry wise. I mean, and to think that you were, an NBC NCO to get promoted that quick, you were on a fast track, man.
I think they had a shortage, but thank you for that. But I absolutely loved my chain of command, and I was a soldier, and your dad knows full well, being a special forces operator the way he was for all those years, it's the cream of the crop. Those are professional soldiers. And even though I knew I'd only enlisted at that time for 3 years, I wanted to be a professional soldier. And so I gave them 3 years, and it's 3 of the best years of my life. I still stay in contact with 2 of my first sergeants. And occasionally one of my buddies will make contact. I absolutely love those guys. And it was just such a great experience to be at Fort Carson with the 4th ID. And, I went to PLDC, the Primary Leadership Development course, and my roommate, I was the distinguished graduate as a corporal, and he was a E5 sergeant from a battery, and he was the next one. And so him and I graduated 1 and 2 out of that class, and we were the first class in 1989 to go through. And I loved it. I was a soldier, and I was proud to be there, because my dad had instilled in me a great love of country. And I didn't really know it at the time, but he instilled in us discipline. And for as tough as he was, and he was tough, he grew up in Pittsburgh. I miss him now, but he had a lot to do with this. And anyhow, I could go on forever about the Army. And I know some guys' experiences weren't so great. And, guys that did get deployed multiple times, and they may have a different opinion, but most of the veterans that I meet these days, whether it's an NCO or an officer, are so darn proud of what they did for this country. And one of the reasons why we did Straight Out Combat Radio is because, I really dislike it when people think that the veterans are broken. And the ones that I know have certainly had their challenges, but they are by no means broken.
John, I'm curious how you made the leap into entrepreneurship after you got out of the Army. Now, how'd you make that choice? Because, you were in a really structured situation, and it's like, I just throw it all to the wind and do whatever the hell I want, be an entrepreneur.
Great question. I think I cheated. I went to college first. I had the opportunity to be in corporate America, and which was a good experience for me. But when I got out of the service, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And of course, it was much different in 1989. I was home for about 60 days, and my first sergeant called me, and he says, hey, I can't tell you what we're doing, but we're painting the tracks for the desert. And this was right before Desert Storm. And so he goes, I have this line in this paragraph number for you. And would you like to come back? And I'm like, I'm painting houses out here on the beach. And I'm sure my unit's going, all the guys that I had served with are going. So I went down to the recruiter, and they said, well, you know what? It just so happens that your MOS it's been blocked out, but we can give you can re-enlist. So I did. I re-enlisted. I went back in 81st ARCOM, and I became an NBC NCO for one of the batteries down here on the West Coast. We never got deployed, but I gave back another year. But to answer the question, so when I got out of that, I went back to painting houses, and I knew that I wanted to work for myself. And what I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I was good with people. I knew that I loved the outdoors. And so I got reacquainted with a woman that I had known 10 years earlier. And we had worked together when I was in college during the summer at a restaurant here locally. And she had gone through a divorce. And my brother, who was a local attorney, linked me up with her, and we hit it off right away. Of course, she had 2 sons, and I wasn't really ready for an immediate family. And but long story short, I wanted to open up a store, some kind of a retail store. And at that time, we were looking at environmental products. This was back in 1991. And so I asked my dad if he would lend me $25,000. And he's like, what? And so my girlfriend at the time put in $25,000. I put in $25,000, and we came up with a business plan to open a retail store that sold environmentally friendly products. And
that was way ahead of the time.
Yes, sir. And it was called Environeers. We had a really cool logo of a planet with a raccoon cap, and we opened. I didn't know. I knew business because my degree in college was a business degree, but I didn't know retail, and I really didn't know the products. But I did a lot of reading, and so we opened the store. We were profitable. We were in business for 23 years. We were profitable for 22 of the 23 years. With 1 year, we didn't make a profit. It was the first year of the mortgage downturn. But that store morphed into a backpacking store. And what was really cool, and I know Otis and Cam and you guys can relate to this, but I opened up a side business running trips to the Andes. And so I was doing guided mountaineering trips, something I had never done before, but it was as close as I could come to the military, being a civilian, because you're on a rope team, you're with individuals that are motivated. And for 15 years, we ran trips. And then the bottom fell out and the mortgage debacle hit. And I went back to the store and made a lot of adjustments. We had one down year, but we came back and made a profit. And then life really got interesting. But we can talk a little bit about that. But there were, I will say this, there weren't a lot of services for transitioning veterans back in 1989. Not like there are.
You went down and you got your last check, and you walked out the gate after you turned in all your gear. That was
TA-50, yes, sir. And you know how that goes. And I didn't really know what to expect. The country was not at war like we have been for so long. And, Otis, SF has played a huge part in all these engagements the last nearly 2 decades. But, it was a different climate. We didn't hear a lot about post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injuries. We didn't hear a lot about this war on terror. We hadn't been initiated into that quite yet, even though we had some incidences with the Marines and, the towers and all that, but there wasn't a lot there. And basically what I did is I did a lot on my own. I learned a lot on my own. My dad helped me out a great deal because he had been in business for a long time. And
that's what I want to explore a bit more, John, is when you say you learned a lot on your own, how'd you do that? I mean, was it whoops, oh shit, don't do that again? Or was it, let me read this, let me talk, blah, 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 blah. What was generally how you did it? Because I mean, to go from spending some time in corporate America, 3+ years in the Army as an NCO, which gave you some great leadership and experience, and then it's, hey, I'm gonna marry this girl and we're gonna start a retail store. Woo-hoo. Right? I mean, come on, I'm belittling it, but purposely, because I want, what was the sauce, man?
Thank you for that. I remember reading a book, sitting around the pool, back in the days when we were pumping iron and everything in college. And I remember reading this book, Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill. I mean, it's a classic. Most people that understand those things get it. And I can remember one chapter. There you go. See, Otis, you got every book that I need to read some of those books. But anyhow, and I remember one chapter in there particular. He was describing a guy. I'm not going to give away his name, but he kept he wanted to learn the automotive business. Mm-hmm. And so he kept going in, and the secretary, who was the, what do they call that? The gatekeeper. Yep. Kept telling him he's busy. Henry Ford's busy. He was trying to get in to see Henry Ford. Kept going back. And I don't know how many times, I'm not going to make up facts, but he kept going back and going back and going back. And he kept going back and keep going, right? We're listening to that. So, but finally he just said, listen, you're giving me the runaround. I need to get in and talk to this guy. So he finally gets in, he bursts in, he talks to Henry Ford, who takes him under his wing, and he teaches him the automotive business, that person being Lee Iacocca. And what I learned in that was you have to do a lot of things on your own. Nobody's going to nursemaid you and walk you through the ropes. You meet somebody that wants to mentor you, grab onto them because they're like gold. Camden, your dad has mentored me on quite a few things, and you just got to find the right people. And that's kind of what I did. So I did a lot of reading on my own, but also I picked a lot of brains, and I tried to get a hold of people that knew more than I did, because I really didn't know a lot about being in business on my own. And I also researched my product and my industry. I did that on my own. So I really made sure that I knew everything about the products that we sold in our store. I made sure that we bought quality products. And then your dad, Otis, you mentioned leadership. To me, leadership is everything. I don't care if it's a mom and pop shop. I don't care if you're working in corporate America. It's leadership here on your podcast show. It doesn't matter if you're in a church with a nonprofit or whatever. The leadership is going to reflect into that business. Mm-hmm. And it's imperative that leaders, even in startups, to try to gain as much knowledge. And that doesn't mean you're going to walk into it and know everything, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. As long as you learn from them. You might make the same mistake 3 times, 4 times, but as long as you learn, it's going to come. It's not going to be easy sailing. And that's one thing I want to say on your show. There's a lot of people out there and I've heard this, it's easy. Just think this. If you have this mindset, you're going to blow right through it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not so easy. Mm. There's a special sauce that Otis just mentioned. It's called perseverance. It's called having faith. It's called believing in yourself. And we've heard it, what's Marcus Luttrell said, never quit. And it might be cliche to some people, but to me, it's a mantra to hang your hat on. Don't ever give up, and believe in that dream. And I do believe that if you keep going and you find the right people and you always integrally do what's right, there's no way in hell that you're going to fail. There's just no way. And if you do fail, it's probably going to be because of something you didn't do. I didn't sell off all those mortgages to have a bad year, so I had to adjust fire, and we had to come back, and the next year we made a profit. So there's going to be a lot of things that happen to you in business and in life that are no fault of your own. You just run into them. But if you have enough intestinal fortitude and enough belief in who you are and what you're doing, and you can motivate those people around you to accomplish the mission, it's going to happen for you. I love entrepreneurs. I love guys like you that really, you want to do it your way. And that's why we're in America, and we can still do it our way. When you have integrity, things are going to be good. If you lack some of those basic ingredients, it's going to be a rocky road. So just God bless America. I just
hallelujah, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
but you know what I mean,
oh,
y'all.
Yeah.
And
we do. And you touched on a lot of stuff there. One thing I'd like to go back, because I've discussed this with some of my friends recently, and I've heard it as the modern era, there's so many different forms of information you can get. And it's kind of like, okay, what do I do? Do I read books? Do I listen to podcasts? What do you do? it's all about finding that magic formula of, you know, balancing all those different things. And you mentioned this with the mentorship. And I think the mentorship and the reading are the two biggest pieces of that, because when you have a mentor, you can unpack so much information so much more quickly than you're ever able to get from, you know, a book especially. But if you're going through and learning all those steps yourself rather than just getting the bird's eye view, it's completely different. And so mentors can carry it a lot. And then reading, I mean, really, when you're going through and you're reading these classic books, and I haven't read the one y'all mentioned, I'll have to add it to my list too. But, you know, one that comes to mind is a classic, of course, is The Art of War, Sun Tzu. When you're going through that, you're getting mentored by Sun Tzu. That's what's happening. And if you look at it with that perspective and you're able to tie yourself into all of these different mentors that, you know, for thousands and thousands of years, there's so much knowledge there that can be unpacked.
You know, Camden, you said it so eloquently and succinctly, and you made your point because it's true. You know, I interviewed a U.S. Marine, a guy that I had met out in San Antonio a couple years back, and his name's John Preston. His episode on our podcast was the 1,000-Year Warrior, and you mentioned the Art of War, and you're right that those mantras, if you will, or those chapters live on today, and anything that we do in life is going to carry on, especially if it's something that has great weight and momentum. And you're right. I don't think you can ever get enough knowledge. And if you start to gain knowledge, it's also important to be humble, because I've met a lot of mentors. And Otis, you're going to love this. I've seen people out there that are mentoring people with absolutely no credentials. You know, they've read a book, they're regurgitating some information, and you know, it may be useful, but unless you have an agenda that's integral, I have to question it sometimes. I know that's not what this show is about, but you're right. And I like to see guys read those books. You know, The Art of War is a classic. It's around here somewhere, but I'll tell you this, throw in a classic every now and then, you know, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or, you know, Tale of Two Cities, or, you know, one of those books that it kind of grounds you. Because my wife says, you know, you're reading all these books. What's the deal? When are you going to get up and start doing it? And it's like, so throw in a classic just to bring some levity into it. But you're right. Reading is good. And I think what we've all hit upon is the right people. What Otis and what you guys have managed to do here is you're taking these technological tools. This is great. I can see y'all, and we can speak. You're down in New Mexico, Camden?
Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, great. That's not far from Tombstone. Otis is in Colorado, but you're making the human connection. And this is something that I really believe to be true in today's modern technological business world. If you can take these tools like you all have and I have, and we can create a humanistic approach to the way we conduct business, visual, non-scripted conversation, a real human element, I believe that podcast shows like this one and the things that we're doing are the ones that are going to set a standard for others to emulate. And that doesn't mean that I'm cocky and arrogant. What I'm trying to say is, to anybody listening that's in business and wants to make it real by making the human connection. Don't just think that clicks and clicks and clacks and metrics and all this is going to solve, or the cell phone. If you think this is going to solve all the problems of the world, I got news for you. You're going to be in a world of trouble, because what's going to solve it is people like us. And you make the human connection, good things are going to happen.
And I love that. That's another piece, kind of going back to what I was saying with like the mentoring, reading, and like podcasts as a piece of that. Is podcasts, they fill a different hole that you're not getting from reading a book. You know, with podcasts, you tend to get a little bit more in-depth type of conversational type pieces, which are really easy for people to latch onto and kind of get that more in-depth understanding, but in a much shorter period of time. Whereas, it's the way I've heard it put from a lot of people is podcasts are really good to give you 20 minutes to go get you to buy a book, and then read for a week once you figure out that you want to learn more about it. But the conversational aspect of it makes it so much more approachable to people who normally wouldn't want to be involved in that type of conversation in the first place.
Hey, are you looking for a co-hosting position in any other podcast shows? I'll steal you away from no, but you're so right, and I like the way you said that because it's true. And what's interesting, you go in the self-help book section of any bookstore in America, and you see all these stories of things that people have done, and I call it the give back.
Mhm.
And when you can give back, I haven't written any books. I know your dad's written one. I may write a book sooner or later, but that's a give back. And when somebody that's in a mentoring position or coaching position, authorship position, or in a leadership position can actually put pen to paper and ink something that can help somebody, that's an extra layer that makes mentoring and coaching and all of this so much worthwhile. Because buy those books, and what happens with these books is you'll purchase a book, you'll try to do a program, and it doesn't work for you, and people get discouraged. And I tell people with the self-help books, read them, take out of them what works for you.
Mhm.
And if you make a mistake, it doesn't mean you just made a mistake. It doesn't mean you're not doing the program. It just means that you made a mistake. And if something doesn't work for you and you do it 10 times and it's not going to ever work because maybe it's just not in your heart to work, try something different. But self-help books, to me, and listening and reading about what other people have been through, to me, can save you a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
One of the things that I was thinking as we were talking about that is, if you think just 50, 60 years ago, and you really only got the books that were at your library, maybe the bookstore, in town. And that was pretty limited. And you think about where we're at now. I mean, to be able to read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, to read The Five Rings, to read meditations. I mean, you start to think about how these different books, these different philosophies from around the world, and those are just three that pop into my head right off the top. But think about how much better, more educated, more rounded our education is, more knowledgeable. It's that understanding of the different ways of seeing things and different ways of thinking about things, and they're all right at our fingertips. I mean, between Amazon and libraries online, good
Mhm.
grief, the entire world's knowledge is available to us, and you just have to decide whether or not you want to partake in it. You want to digest some of it, and then you want to give back. It's up to you, but it's all available, and because it's available, that allows us to have such a broader understanding and perform better in the end. And it just kind of made me think. My next step is when I start thinking about, when I was in SF, and the guys that came behind me, the year groups behind me, the team leaders, the sergeant majors, the team sergeants that were behind me. And it's like, holy crap, those guys are better. I mean, I'm so glad I'm not competing against those guys, because I never would have gotten past first lieutenant. I mean, because we continue to learn, and we continue to give back so that we all get better. And I think that's
Oh yeah.
a really powerful piece, and it's an opportunity that we all have right now in this day and age, just to tap into all that knowledge that's available to us.
And I think, John, you kind of were touching on this about with your self-help books. You were talking about how you pull different pieces out of, that work for you out of different self-help books. And that's the same type of thing you're talking about, Dad, with all this different amount of knowledge from all over the world. You kind of touched on like enlightenment, like meditation stuff. If you look at different religions and, the purest form of all these different religions, they've all reached their enlightenment. There's something there. Their books are completely different, but there's something there that they've got figured out. And it's one of those, if you look at the whole picture and you can start piecing those type of things together, there's truth in it. And there's always truth behind all those things. That's why people have been doing it for thousands of years, right? It's just
Well,
about going through and piecing that all together.
absolutely. You guys are absolutely correct. We've heard knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of interesting things here, because knowledge is power. The more that you can put into your head up here, the more well-rounded you're going to be. But the next key to that is the leadership component of it. What is a leader with knowledge going to do? How's he going to wield that power? And I believe that spirituality, and you just touched upon this, Camden, which is brilliant. I believe that spirituality is part of leadership.
Mhm.
There's got to be a moralistic code embedded somewhere in that leader's psyche that will give him that edge. And I think, like you say, I'm reading a book now called Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Miss. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, but she talks about what you just touched upon, Camden. She talks about all the different religions of the world
Mhm.
and what Jesus Christ had in his sacred contract, and Muhammad and the Buddha. And it's very interesting because there is a layer of truth that ties them all together.
Mhm.
And I think that leadership, and I'm so hot on leadership, and that's why your dad has been such an inspiration to me, because he's out there training leaders. He's taking his leadership skills and what he's learned from over 2 decades in the U.S. Army in all kinds of different environments with different types of people, not only in a different uniform that he wore, but also guys in his own chain above and below. That's skill sets that he's on mission still. And a leader like that, and I'm not here to butter your bread, Otis, but a leader like that, that's a guy that you want to be around, because you're going to get something from him that you're not going to find somewhere else. And so it's nice to see all of these SF guys and all of these guys that wore the same uniform that I did, still on mission, still out there cutting edge, still doing innovative things to help make the world a better place. And the community that your dad came out of,
Mhm.
I've met some of the best human beings on the planet that were special operators. These guys are tight. They understand team. They understand that we got to pick each other up. And they also understand that we do have a lot to be thankful for. And yeah, I mean, I'm just, again, so very blessed to come back from where I was just a few years ago. And that, that's another story for another time, but
Well, that's a great segue though, John. Green Zone Heroes. I want to jump into Green Zone here because it's a great mission. And you and I, we talked about that. God, it's been what, two plus years now, I think.
yes, sir.
When you were just starting to get it off the ground, and man, I love it. And I'll let you. I want you to talk a little bit about it because I want everybody to hear your passion for it as you tell it.
Well, thank you for that. And we know the Green Zone name came out of Baghdad back in the day in Iraq. The Green Zone, for those, and I'm not a combat veteran, but I've spoken to many of them, they say it's a relatively safe place in a war zone. You can still take incoming mortar fire and the occasional stray round from a sniper. But, so I thought to myself, the veterans, they deserve a lot, no doubt. Men and women who have worn the uniform deserve something. And even though they volunteered, we still need to take care of them. And how do we do that? So I started putting together a plan for this company. And the Green Zone Hero is not necessarily the veteran. The Green Zone Hero is an American company that does something for veterans. And it could be they hire them, they give them discounting, they give the veteran-centric initiatives. They're managed by a veteran, or they're owned by a veteran, or they hire disabled veterans. So there's a lot of companies in America. In fact, 99% of all the companies out there do something for veterans. But there's no nexus point to figure out who they all are. So we decided to build a B2B business, marketing, branding company, if you will, to give these companies that support our veterans the tools that they need to make their game better, and so that they get recognized. So we created this platform, and interestingly enough, within the first 90 days, we got a reach out from Harley Davidson motorcycles. They heard about us somewhere, and I don't know how, but they did. And long story short, they became one of our founding members.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, we've had Mission Barbecue and Sam Ash Music. Sam Ash's dad was in D-Day. A lot of stories that you don't really know, but Boar's Head Provisions, and then over 700 companies have joined the network, and they continue to join. And they want to know what we were doing, and we told them. They said, "Where do we send a check to?" So when the guy was getting the banking information, he goes, "Stand up." And then I'm like, I'm talking to this guy on the phone. "What do you mean stand up?" He goes, "Pat yourself on the back." He says, "Harley Davidson doesn't brand with companies that don't have a brand." So we knew that we were on to something, whether it was perceptual or real. We knew that we had just gotten validated. Since then, I think 80 Harley Davidsons have joined the network. But what was really cool, and I went to Milwaukee to sit with their corporate executives a year ago, February. And before we started the meeting, the corporate brand manager came up and said to me, there's no fee high enough or no cost that's too high to support freedom. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And so what we're a tested business strategy for somebody, a business directory. There's over 100 business directories. They still work for exposure. We don't just take your money and run. You get a geocached listing page. You get SEO on the back end, search engine optimization. We give you a manifesto that if you do anything on that, you're going to improve your business. We also have community outreach tools with the documentary movie industry. Alex Quaid, who we love to death, done some special operator movies. One of them was called Danger Close. But so we're tied in with them. So we have tools to Hollywood. And then we have a best practices manual that we update all the time. Things that businesses can do to, if somebody uses Army nomenclature to a Marine, it's not going to go over well and they're going to lose the trust. So we teach a little bit about nomenclature and how to talk the language between services. And it's an educational portal too. And we've just had a lot of fun doing it. And then that bled into Straight Outta Combat Radio to get more exposure for our company. That mission is to diminish the negative stereotype of the combat veteran, to show, like I said earlier, that they're not broken. And then we're working on a couple other projects. One's called Task Force Zen, which is a global initiative to bring healers with holistic people that need to be healed with people that heal. We've identified 37 different modalities from acupuncture to yoga that all have science behind them. And, with a global population of over almost 8 billion or maybe a little over 8 billion, that's a target rich environment for people that need help. So we would like to create a portal where we can marriage those people that need help.
So Task Force Zen is more than just veteran focused, right?
It's global. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we're working on a group next to that called the Outliers, which are people that think at a different wavelength than the stereotypical societal way of doing things. That's kind of a. But anyhow, and then with my own person,
fuzzy, touchy,
what's
going on there, John?
Yeah, yes, sir. I want to be more clear. The Outliers is for people that want to find new ways of doing business in the holistic healing field. And then the What's Your Apocalypse, which is my own personal journey of emotional injury, if you will, as an overcomer of childhood assault at a very young age, and something that I kept silent for 42 years that didn't explode until I had traumatic brain injury from a car accident where I had been out drinking and driving in 2012. And that personal journey is in there. CBDs helped to save my life. And so What's Your Apocalypse I'm putting together, and we're thinking about doing a program called Trauma Dramas, where there's 3 men or 4 men, 4 women or 3 women, where we go to different locations and we all dress up. We do it through drama. When that happened to me, it was an apocalyptic moment for me. And so I dress up like I'm, Mad Max. And
I've seen pictures you look like you pulled it right out of the Mad Max movie.
It's crazy. And I'll tell you, it's movie quality. I strip it all down to a 1-piece bodysuit of the human muscles. And then it sounds kind of crazy, but then I get dressed again, and every single article of clothing or accessory is a positive belief or a positive behavior. And so I've got a couple ladies up north that have gone through their own traumas. One wants to dress up as a 15-year-old rebellious teenager and tell her story of recovery. So, so What's Your Apocalypse and Trauma Dramas is something that's close to my heart. And I know I'm only one guy, but I know that there's a team of individuals out there that want to help on that mission. So Green Zone Heroes is all about supporting freedom by supporting the companies that support our men and women who have worn the uniform and continue to serve, and not just them, but their families. Your dad was gone a lot, Camden, and your mom relied on your brother and you. And you guys are an important piece of that equation. If a guy like your dad who's serving his country in an undisclosed location is out there doing his thing, it was up to you guys to make sure the home front was battened down. And it's not just the sons, it's the daughters too, and the wives and husbands who I'm so extremely grateful to have, because without a good home front, the guys like your dad can't operate in those places for victory. And so it's important that we not only recognize those businesses that support the veterans, but we recognize them for supporting the families too.
And we got to include Sierra in that, because next, Camden and Braden's sister. So I know you haven't met her, but yeah,
I've heard a little bit about her.
She might have done just a little bit more than me back in the day.
No, but I know this though. I've talked to your dad many times, and I'm not here to bust anybody out, but your dad loves his family, and conversations that we've had off the air and in personal conversations, he is so proud of you guys and your daughter too. And if she's listening, and I just know that I just want to thank you all from my heart for supporting your dad all of those years that he was out doing what he had to do to serve this country. And I feel the same way about my dad, and my own mom and my own brother and sisters, that when my dad was away, that we were there for mom. And by doing that, you're part of your dad's journey, and it's basically you're part of that legacy. So thank you for that. I mean that too.
Well, thanks, John. How can people find out more? If there's people that have their companies and they haven't signed up to be part of Green Zone Heroes, what's the best path to get involved with that?
Thank you, Otis. You can go to, we're on the World Wide Web, Green Zone Hero, that's plural, Green Zone Hero, GREENZONEHERO.com. You can sign up on the internet. Just want to give you a heads up. We've got a company near Fort Bragg that's putting together another website for us, and will be operational November 15th, but you can still go onto the website. You can also, I'll leave you my cell number. I'm fairly good at getting back to you as soon as I can, and 941-400-7333, 941-400-7333. We have Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, John Krotec, Krotec. And I don't have
these in the show notes too, because most people are like me and they're listening to this while driving the car and they're going, damn it. And they gotta
don't write it down right now. Wait till you stop.
Yeah. Don't do that. I don't want to cause any auto accidents on Interstate 5 out there, but I'm accessible, and I will get back to you. I'll make my best effort. And, I do know this. I would not be here if it wasn't for an army, a community, a village. It's so very true. I've had a lot of people from being a very small young man to now that have helped me through some of the challenges in life. And I can tell you, you can't do it alone. I don't have all the answers, but I can offer some solutions at times. And I'm just here to help you, because I have great faith that whatever you decide you want to do, that you can get it done. So I have faith, whoever you are and wherever you're listening from, you can do it.
And I'll vouch for that. That John is not just a eloquent talker and a wave the flag sort of guy that puts it away in a case. This guy means what he says and does it. I mean, right down to a phone call and action taken immediately following phone calls. So yeah, if you want to learn more about Green Zone Heroes, and I highly recommend it, and I fully support it as an organization, as a business too, because it's a business that is doing right and doing good, and I think that's what we all want to hear, and we all want to be more a part of. So I appreciate you doing that, John, and I really appreciate your time on our show today and taking time out of your day, especially after listening to all the projects that you got going on. I don't know how you squeeze this in, man. So that's pretty honorable for you to take the time out. And, our tradition, we always like to wrap our show up with what'd you learn today? And I'll throw it to Camden first to see what he learned, because he's been kind of quiet today. I don't know. He's got a lot going on. Camden, what'd you learn today? I hope you're taking good notes.
Oh yeah, well, I loved the read a classic, because that was something I've thought about as I'm trying to read all these different leadership books and all this different stuff. Someone asked me a question the other day about like Othello or something, and it just completely went over my head. And I thought, wow, as I'm going back and reading so much, I should probably go back to the classics. And you kind of hammered that home too, because it gives you a little bit more grounding. So that's great. I love that.
Great. And you both tapped on. So Camden, you kind of talked about it through just gaining your understanding of the world, but that theme that comes across in all the religions and philosophies. And then John, you, of course, I should have known that you'd read a book about it because you're quite the prolific reader, Sacred Contracts. So that one is, I'm bumping that one up into my reading list to learn more about that, because I'm fascinated by that understanding and those common threads and themes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
John?
sir. Well, I appreciate you. When I see you two guys together, it makes me think about my own dad and the values that he instilled in me. And anytime a father and a son can do things like this together and make a meaningful impact in people's lives, that's a good thing. And you guys have certainly done that. I've enjoyed working with your dad. We're going to continue to work, Otis, and certainly admire you, Camden, and you have a bright future ahead of you, and just pace yourself. You're going places, and I'm just so very impressed to be part of your show, and I'll be listening, and it's been a real treat to be here today.
Thanks for being here, John. It was great talking with you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks again, John. A lot of fun.
Oh, am I on the bubble next week, Otis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,